Hi there, and welcome to another Eurogamer Newscast. My name is Tom Phillips, I'm Deputy Editor, and joining me today are news reporters Ishraq Subhan. Say hello, Ishraq.
Hello.
And Ed Nightingale.
Hello.
And we are discussing, breaking down, talking through last night's Sony PlayStation State of Play event, which was sort of the first big announcement bonanza that we'd had from PlayStation in 2022. They've just released a bunch of really high-profile blockbuster first-party games. We've had Gran Turismo, we've had Horizon, and expectations were very high, I think, for this event. But they did sort of set expectations about what they were going to show, and in terms of like what we would expect there. They said that it was going to be largely partners, so third parties, not PlayStation itself, and largely from a Japanese audience, but not exclusively. And to be fair, I think that is generally what we got. We'll go through like our overall general things at the end, what we think maybe. But let's talk it through as we saw it. Starting with an interesting game that's not Dino Crisis. Ed, what did you think when you saw Exoprimal? Did you think that it was Dino Crisis to start off with?
I think everyone did. I mean, you see Capcom, you see dinosaurs, you immediately go Dino Crisis. Now, I actually never played the original PlayStation games, but I would love to catch up on them. So please do a remake or just a re-release. I would love the chance to play them again. So yeah, I think everyone immediately presumes that. But then it was kind of zombie dinosaurs with mechs.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of dinosaurs just
falling from the sky?
Yeah, falling from portals. It was like, you know, those games where they pit armies and armies of things against each other and they just like smash into each other like water.
Yeah.
It was just like that, just dinosaurs just impacting the ground and bouncing away.
Smashing into each other, yeah.
It's like Days Gone, but with dinosaurs from the sky and mechs. Or that tech demo that Nintendo did of all those Marios that became Pikmin. It was like that with dinosaurs.
And it was described as the first in a new IP for Capcom.
First and only?
We shall see. But very much not a Dino Crisis game.
Yeah.
Ishraq, did you ever play Dino Crisis? Are you a Dino Crisis fan?
I'm far too young for that.
Wow.
But I do know about its significance. So I think we were all expecting that. I mean, this is interesting. I don't know what to make of it. I have no idea what the narrative is. But you know, they're taking some steps. You know, trying a new IP out. I commend them for that. Whether it's going to be good is too early to say, I think.
There were some people saying, well, this isn't Dino Crisis in terms of gameplay, so I'm quite pleased that it's not a new Dino Crisis game. Ed, what did you gather when you first saw it? I was a little confused about what sort of type of game that it was.
Yeah. More than anything, it came across as a sort of Titanfall Apex kind of vibe to me, was my immediate thought, but just against dinosaurs. So just, yeah, it came across as sort of a multiplayer shooting thing that was just a bit of a Netflix algorithm, what's popular, let's throw them together kind of vibe, more than we've actually thought this through.
But a Netflix algorithm that also recommends Anthem, which surprised me. So this is exosuit-based combat. So it's players, humans in robot sort of armor that can shoot things, and you're playing in teams, exactly like Anthem. The difference, I suppose, here is that, and we really only got this detail through via press release afterwards, that it's going to be teams of 5 players against each other. Or rather, teams of 5, each fighting dinosaurs, but only one team wins. So I don't know does that mean that like there's 5 people and 5 people in an arena full of dinosaurs and you're shooting the other team as well as the dinosaurs? Or is it that it's sort of each at the same time, these player versus dinosaur battles are going on and it's like the last team standing?
Yeah. Are the dinosaurs just fodder for something else?
I don't know. I have a lot of questions about Exo Primal. Yes. There were some wonderful names last night for new games, which we'll get onto. Ishra, are you going to give this a go? Does it tickle your fancy?
If there's a demo or something, I'll give it a go. But whether I'm going to spend my good hard-earned money on it is another thing. I don't know yet. It's tickled my interest. I'll say that.
If it's a free PS Plus game, I'll consider it.
Oh,
It feels like the kind of game that just is crying out for a beta of some kind, especially because it's going to be multiplayer. There was mention in the trailer that multiplayer obviously requires PlayStation Plus, and so it's going to be online. I just want to read out the description we got in the press release because it is so brilliant. I cannot dislike this game because of how nutty it sounds. So in the near future, strange occurrences are threatening humanity's existence. Vortexes are opening in the sky, flooding cities with deadly creatures from the prehistoric era. This is my favorite line. As raptors cascade from above and Tyrannosaurus Rexes stomp through the streets, it's up to squads of 5 brave exofighters in mechanized combat armor known as exosuits, who'd have thought, to fight back against the dinosaurs who threaten to push humanity towards extinction. That's what happened to the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Wow. Whoever wrote that press release, my hat goes off to you because it really did make me chuckle at 10:30 last night when I got it. So thank you.
Cascading raptors.
Who'd have known that raptors could cascade?
Yeah. Wow. It's something.
I'm intrigued to say the least by this game. So we shall have to see. It is out in 2023, so there's a bit of a wait. And we should also say, as was the case with a few games last night, the original trailer showed it for PS4, PS5, and then when we got more details through from the actual maker of the game, it was like, oh, it's also coming to PC, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. So it's a cross-gen console and PC game coming out next year.
Something for everyone.
Yeah, it was a fun way to start off the show, I thought.
Yeah.
Next up, we got Ghostwire Tokyo, which I think you're both super into. What did we learn from the trailer last night, Ed? What didn't we know? Or
absolutely nothing. But okay. I think it's the biggest Sony game coming out, at least within the next few weeks. You know, that hasn't already been Horizon and GT. So I think it was expected that it would be there in some form. Even just a kind of launch trailer of, hey, just a reminder it's happening, I think is all we really expected anyway. I'm really intrigued by it. I feel like it's got some really interesting horror ideas, but seems a lot more action-focused than atmospheric necessarily. I just hope that it plays well. I feel like people haven't really had a chance to go hands-on with it yet, which is maybe a worry. And what I also haven't checked out is the Prelude visual novel that came out that's available for free, which sort of gives you a bit of insight into the story, which I'm intrigued by as well, which they also didn't mention. So I'm really intrigued to give it a go, but I don't think we really expected too much more from it at this point.
It's out in, is it 2 weeks or 1 week now?
2 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. And Ishrat, did you say you're going to play that as well?
Yeah. I know so little about this game, but I think that's a good thing. Given the last few releases from Sony, especially Deathloop and Horizon, where they would drip you news every week, where it got to the point where by the time the game came out, you knew everything about the game. And I really hate that. I really hate Sony's marketing strategy when it comes to that. So the fact that I know so little about this game actually excites me. Like, I can go into this fresh and knowing absolutely nothing. And like Ed said, the horror elements with the action, it does look quite interesting. I am quite intrigued, so I'll probably give this one a go.
And Tom, you don't really care.
Well, it's not something that I want to get too excited for just yet because I don't have a PlayStation 5 and I want to play it and it looks nice. So, down the road, I think I will. and yeah, it's.
I should say
It
it
looks
is
nice.
also coming out on PC. So
Yes, true. Although you've got to think that down the line, as a Bethesda published game, it will go on to Xbox Game Pass, and I'll probably play
for
it
sure,
on Game
yeah.
Pass in 12 months, I guess.
We won't spoil it for you then.
It looks like a lovely romp around Tokyo, doing scary things.
Who
So,
doesn't love a horror romp?
yeah, and Tokyo, like it's my jam. But I will wait to play it. Something that you don't need to wait to play is Stranger of Paradise, which you can now try a demo of. This leaked before the presentation, but we did get a brief trailer of it last night. Ed, does this tickle your fancy?
On paper, yes. It's a Souls action game meets Final Fantasy, which is absolutely my kind of game. Whether it lives up to that or whether it is just bizarre chaos, we will soon find out. I'm definitely gonna try the demo. I'm intrigued as to whether the popularity of Elden Ring might have any kind of impact on this, just because it does have that slightly soulsy vibe of action, and if that's becoming more mainstream and more popular now, thanks to Elden Ring and all the hype around that, will that trickle now into this? Will Final Fantasy fans who maybe weren't keen on that gameplay maybe be a bit more interested? I don't know. I also read it's going to have an easy mode, so great. I might just give that a go.
That's how I feel about Elden Ring. When they add the easy mode to that, I might give it a crack. Ishraq, are you tempted to try the demo? No. Why not? Not your cup of tea.
Yeah, it's just not my type of game, if I'm being honest.
You mean you don't like Killing
If it
Chaos?
has, no. If it has glowing reviews, I'll be tempted, but otherwise, I'm probably going to give it a miss.
It seems like a fun but very niche game, and one that I'm still a little bit confused why it has the Final Fantasy name on it.
It doesn't look. I mean, from the previous demo that came out after E3 last year, it doesn't look or feel like a Final Fantasy game at all. It's got maybe the odd enemy name and some jobs and magic names that are Final Fantasy. I can't even remember the name of the lead character, but it's something really generic. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy game, which in itself almost intrigues me.
Well, speaking of fantasy games with generically named protagonists, up next was Forspoken, which of course was recently delayed and is now out in October. You've got to think that maybe when this trailer was first planned that they were expecting it to launch much sooner, but it's been pushed back, probably for the best, I think, and we did get a little bit more of it last night. This is an interesting one. It's like clearly a big budget game, and I think a lot of thought has been put into it, but it's not totally landing for a few people at the moment. Ed, what are your thoughts on Forspoken, and did last night's trailer change any of them?
Not really, and I think the fact it's been delayed is a little worrying. I think the movement in it looks fantastic. That's the way Frey leaps around and moves with such speed, I think, is really, really interesting. And I think it has the potential for an interesting magic system. My main question is who thought a talking bracelet was a good idea? That's my overriding feeling of that game.
It's quite a Nintendo thing, isn't it? Like a talking bracelet. That's the sort of thing that you would have. Like you have a talking hat and a talking fairy and a talking
Ring.
Sword.
I mean, this is not Ring Fit Adventure. But it has that vibe with a sort of dark, serious fantasy. And I'm like, this doesn't mesh. I don't get this.
What do you think about the game's tone, Ishraq? Are you sort of, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. So when this game was first revealed, I was quite happy to see a black female protagonist. And then we had some controversy behind the development, and I don't know, it just feels like there may be a few too many stereotypes regarding the main protagonist that makes me seem a bit on edge about the game. I'm also not sure about the central premise. I think that's also part of the reason why the game's delayed. So, yeah, I just don't know what to make of it. I'll keep my eye on this game. I'm just a little weary right now.
What is the central premise?
That's
I don't feel like that's clear. There's no hook. For me, there's no hook of like, this is why you should play this game. It's just, it's a fantasy realm with cool movement and some magic and a talking bracelet.
I guess for me, and I really haven't spent a lot of time looking into the game because there are just a lot of other things for me to focus my time on. But it looks very high budget, and it looks like a Final Fantasy-esque fantasy world, but with like a properly developed main character, which appeals. But obviously, that has to if you're going to step up to take a swing at that, you need to make sure that you hit it, and hopefully that's what the 6-month delay will do, and they will go back through it and make sure that the game is there to match the visuals, which are stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sure we'll get more trailers for Forspoken before the game comes out. Next up was Gundam Evolution, which is a thing. I don't know if any of us are particularly into our Gundam, so I'm happy for Gundam fans that it was there.
I'm sure they'll be very happy.
May it be an evolution to your Gundam games of the past. And
wow.
I mean, as someone that plays a lot of first-person shooters, it looks very generic, if I'm being honest. I mean, Gundam fans might hate me for saying that.
Do you mean Gundam in general or Gundam Evolution?
Are they separate things? I have no clue. Yeah, just like, they show standard game modes of domination, etc., etc. in the Gundam. But yeah, I just, it's such a crowded market, and first-person shooters haven't done very well in the past 2 years. So there are very high expectations.
I question why it's a first-person shooter, just in that surely Gundam is all about the mechs. So surely you want to see your mech as like how cool it looks. And if it's first-person, you don't get to see that. I mean, you can see the enemy ones, but I don't know. I that seems odd to me.
Moving on, we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga Collection, which is a compilation of 13 classic games, which Wes is very excited about. Anyway, this includes Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Arcade, Turtles in Time Arcade, NES games, SNES games, Mega Drive games, Game Boy games. It comes, as you pointed out earlier, Ed, when we were talking about it, ahead of other Teenage Mutant Ninja titles, or at least one.
See what you did there.
Are you excited for the Teenage Mutant Ninja title revival?
No. I will say the new one does actually look great. I really like the graphical style of it. It's sort of bringing that Streets of Rage 4 kind of vibe to it, but with turtles, and it feels very authentic to the games in this particular collection. It also feels like you get a lot of bang for your buck here. There's 13 different games in this collection, so I'm sure maybe 2 of them are decent, but you get quite a lot for your money, which is decent if you're a fan of the turtles. But it does also feel like promo for the new game, which I'm sure will be a vast improvement.
Yeah, Shredder's Revenge out sometime later in 2022. This seems like a good time to get that stuff out before that, and before the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles' inevitable arrival in Fortnite at some point, I'm sure. Following them, we got a couple of quick trailers for, well, there was something called Gigabash, which was a kaiju brawler out in 2022 for PS4, PS5 from a Malaysian developer. And then we had JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R, which is a remake of the 2013 fighting game JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle. So there we go. That's out in autumn. Trek to Yomi was next, which I can't remember which of you said it, but you had a snappy way of summing up the game in a sentence.
It's 2D Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes.
With the Kurosawa mode on.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is not Kurosawa, it's just black and white.
Who allowed Kurosawa to become a synonym for black and white?
Well, it was Sony, wasn't it? Because Tsushima came out.
I mean, I actually think this does look quite cool. But I do feel like an entire game in black and white could be a bit tiresome unless it's a nice short 4-hour adventure, which I'd be more than happy to play through.
Like Limbo.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a Devolver Digital title. I think it'll be relatively short. Which also means it should have a slightly lower price tag. I'm interested. I'll probably give it a go.
So this was one. Sorry, Ishrak. Were you going to say?
No.
This was one of the few Western-made games in the showcase.
Ironically, about Japan.
Which was ironically about Japan. So I guess it fitted in. After that, speaking of, we had Returnal, which I think you're both looking forward to. But Ishrak, what did you see last night that excited you for going back to the game?
Oh, well, it's co-op.
Yes.
It's co-op. I haven't finished the game. It's bloody hard. This is why I don't play Elden Ring. So the idea that I could play it with a friend and just work on killing the bosses together just really excites me. Plus new content. Like it's just more of what we already got. And I think it's a game, and it's a free update. Like it's hard to be upset about that. I'm just really pleased that the game's getting extra support.
Do you think that they'll make the experience harder when you're in co-op to balance the fact that there's a second person because they're bastards?
That's a good question. They probably will. Now that I think about it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Returnal is, I'd say, more difficult than Elden Ring, at least as far as I've got in it.
Really?
So yeah, I mean, I think in a way, actually, this co-op mode is somewhat addressing the difficulty because I think people have found it very difficult to get into. It's quite niche. It's probably my game of last year. I absolutely love Returnal, but I know that a lot of I've got friends who, just found it too difficult and couldn't get into it. And actually being able to play it as a pair and co-op, I think is a great move. I'm less interested in the tower ascension thing.
Survival mode thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice addition to sort of eke a bit more gameplay out of it. And there is a new boss, I believe, at the end of that. But I think the co-op mode and being able to play that with a friend is huge. And probably that's my favorite thing of this entire presentation.
Solid praise there, and it's out for free later this month, so you really can't complain. The show wrapped up with another 2 Square Enix games. It was a big showing last night for Square Enix for PlayStation. 2 brand new games as well, with some brilliant names. So earlier on we had Capcom announcing a not Dino Crisis. Well, this was Square Enix announcing a not Final Fantasy Tactics called Dio Field Chronicle. Martin suggested that it also had a bit of XCOM in it as well. It looks really nice.
Yeah, I can see
it's
that.
Not on a grid, which is, I guess, gives it that XCOM vibe. I feel like the art looks stunning in a very typical Final Fantasy Tactics-y kind of way, and then the actual gameplay looked a bit bland. Also, Dio Field.
Yeah.
What is that?
So it literally just popped into my head because this morning I was reading through the press release that we got sent through first thing, and they described the areas as diorama-like. So I think what it's doing is the Dio
God.
from diorama and field. I don't know, like the field of battle.
Where's the field? I mean, that does make
The
more sense.
Diofield
but
Chronicle, of
still
course.
I feel like this is the PlayStation equivalent then of triangle strategy.
Yeah,
Like,
which only makes sense if you understand the development of the game and doesn't
Yeah.
really. Yeah, it's a terrible name for quite a nice looking game. Also described as a new franchise, but I mean, it clearly is riffing on Final Fantasy here. So why, if you're putting Final Fantasy into the title of Stranger of Paradise, why aren't you putting Final Fantasy into the Diofield Chronicle?
because there's a remake coming of Final Fantasy Tactics that we all know, but has not been announced yet, so they're saving it for that.
Then why announce this so soon? Just get the remake out first. Do a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Get
Don't
the
bother
old
with
stuff.
this.
No, I know. I thought it looked good, and it's out. This was another game that was announced last night for PlayStation, and then subsequently we got confirmation that it's coming to PC, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, but also Switch, which is nice.
Nice.
And it's due out later in 2022. Wrapping up the show.
With a bang.
I would have wrapped up with the
Well,
Diofield Chronicle, but instead we had Valkyrie Elysium. Ishrak, what did you think of Valkyrie Elysium?
it looked like it came straight out of the PlayStation 2 era.
Not even PlayStation 3. Wow.
Yeah.
PlayStation 2.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks like a generic fantasy action game. I don't know what to make of it. Also, the name is generic, Valkyrie Elysium. Yeah, I think Wes said this earlier, where it's like they just got a name generated. Like, okay, that will do. Publish.
It's I didn't realize this until doing a bit of research last night, but there is a Valkyrie RPG series with elements of Norse mythology in it. I know that there are some fans, and no one expected it to come back. And I imagine if you were a fan of Valkyrie, then this was quite a nice surprise. But without context, and at the end of the show, and essentially a Final Fantasy Tactics game, I think there were expectations of something else to finish the show.
Yes.
Ed, what were you expecting maybe at the end as a big finish?
I mean, as soon as they say, there's a state of play and it's a focus on Japanese publishers, it's immediately Square Enix and it's immediately then Final Fantasy. And we got plenty of Square Enix. We did get a Final Fantasy game, which we already knew about. We can all sit and hope that they're going to throw in some 16 or 7 Remake Part 2. We did not get those. It seems to me, like you say, I'd never heard of Valkyrie before. It is a continuation of a series. It seems like Square Enix are really, between this and the Nintendo Direct, are really delving into their back catalogue at the moment. And seeing what they can remaster or bring back. I feel like this has some potential. It's a little bit generic. I sort of watched the trailer again just before this, and it didn't look quite as bad as I remember. But my overall feeling of it is just grey. It just seems grey and washed out.
Yeah.
There's no colour, there's no vibrancy. It's just grey.
Yeah, I think as well. It just, you have to measure it up against people's expectations, and I think to some extent, people will always, shoot for the moon in terms of what they want things to appear. But it is surprising that we got like what would be the perfect opportunity to drop a small new teaser for 16. It's been a year almost since we saw something about that, if not longer, and it feels a while. And yes, 7 Remake 2, who knows?
Even just like 10 seconds of just zooming in on a logo would have made this entire presentation 100 times better. Just so it's like, yeah, we know it's coming. Good. Great. Thanks.
Yeah, they didn't have to do much.
Well, we did get some decent footage of games out this year and updates and things like that. But yeah, I would agree. I think it's certainly there were expectations for games that we didn't see. I also think that there were some other things there that we were sort of expecting based on rumors and other announcements throughout the day. So earlier on yesterday, we got the confirmation of the Gotham Knights release date, which was put out on Twitter, really low key, and no trailer. Just it's coming out in October, and here's the date. Pretty unusual, I would say, to do it like that and not have a new look at the game. I would have thought that it would. That's the kind of thing that if you were going to release that date on the same day as the PlayStation show, that you would have done it during the PlayStation show. So I do wonder if there was originally going to be trailers or a trailer and marketing beyond just putting that very short message on Twitter. 25th of October 2022, suit up, hashtag Gotham Knights. But that Warner, like many companies, have decided that now is not the time to do so due to so much focus in the news on the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We've seen a lot of companies pull back on marketing, and yesterday, of course, Nintendo decided to postpone indefinitely the release of Advance Wars, which I think was absolutely the right decision. So yeah, I do wonder if there would have been more, maybe more from other Western developers too, and we just didn't see it.
There was also the update to all the new 35th anniversary Final Fantasy website. So I think that launching yesterday as well set some expectation of, okay, is something more coming? I saw quite a lot of chatter around the Pixel remasters potentially coming to consoles, but then that wasn't announced either. So I think a mixture of things, yesterday leading up to this, again, set expectations incorrectly.
Yep. Well, if you were rating it using Eurogamer's review system, Ishraq, what would you give last night's Sony PlayStation State of Play?
I hate to say it, I just wouldn't recommend it. I'd skip this one. I just don't think there's much there. Maybe if you're a big Returnal fan, maybe the update would have been quite exciting, like it was for me. But yeah, I feel like if there was more stuff there, which I think there was plans for, it might have been worth a watch. But it was just so barren and just so little there, and what was there just wasn't that exciting. Yeah, skip it.
Read all about it on Eurogamer instead, I guess.
Yeah,
Ed,
do
what
that.
would you have rated last night?
If this was a game that was to be rated, I would have got a quick look at it and thought this is not worth covering and skipped it entirely.
Wow. Well, again, you can read about it on Eurogamer instead of spending your time watching it. It was about 20-ish minutes, so yeah. I think I would not give it a badge or anything, and yeah, just it's there for people who like it. And I know Martin was very pumped at the end of it. He did not get his Gradius game announced, but he was still quite taken by some of these titles. It's just, yeah. If it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. Right. Well, that was it until the next big announcement ceremony. Who knows when that will be, but we'll be back for it. And until then, I've been Tom Phillips, and my Twitter handle is TomPhillipsEG. And Ed, do you want to give your Twitter handle?
Yep, it's at @Ed_Knights with an N.
And Ishraq?
It's Ishraq with ISHRXQ_.
Nice and easy. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. And thank you for joining me, Ed and Ishraq. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.